marketplace. Is that what it ought to be? Henry Ward Beecher says, and I quote, that it's not when the ship sails that's important, is when the ship comes to port, sails into port. And that's where success is determined, especially when you can clear your goods very quickly. You are watching Weekend Deal on the NTA. Our program is interactive. Tell us what you know. Tell us what you think. Ask us questions. And we'll do our best to provide answers and solutions. It's time to show for you the chat that was held with the Director General, or the head of the Shipper's Council, Hassan Bello. Let's see this.
Bringing Nigeria's economy to the best of Africa and world business requires an ease and regulation of activities within the ports.
Nigeria Shippers Council could be described as the agency that brings balance on shipping and transportation. It is, first of all, a trade facilitator, and secondly, a regulator. Trade facilitator in the sense that we need to facilitate trade, especially the transport aspect of it. Access to port by exporters, for example, very important. We need to stabilize the cost of doing business. We need to also provide the ease of doing business. So we have broadly dual mandate. We regulate the activities of providers of shipping services, like the terminal operators, the shipping companies. We make sure they are efficient, that they render service quickly or promptly at a reasonable cost. We make sure that our ports are efficient, our ports are corruption-free, and basically transportation is done seemingly. That is very important to the economy. So as an economic regulator, we are concerned with what does transport contribute to the economy. And that is very important. Transport drives economy. We make sure that our transport system are efficient. They are modern in terms of infrastructure, in terms of the service that is being rendered. If we have sluggish infrastructure, then we will continue to have sluggish economy. But if we have modern, efficient transportation system, you will show that that will lead to growth of the economy. And so Shippers Council regulates tariff. It looks at the issue of efficiency, especially in comparison with what our neighboring ports are doing, because we are in competition with them. And then we make sure there is competition among the ports. You should know that ports have been concession to the private sector. And since that privatization, things have gone very well. But we also make sure that the government provides the conducive atmosphere for the transportation to thrive, so to say. So this, in broad sense, is what Nigeria Shippers Council do.
With core mandates, Nigeria Shippers Council and other relevant government agencies are on the front line with prospects, challenge, and movement of cargoes within most demanding terrains and destinations of interest.
It is the shipper, that is the exporter or the importer, who decides where his goods will be, which port he will receive his cargo. So it is a question of efficiency. It is an economic decision rather than any parochial consideration. An exporter or importer will look at, first of all, how fast can I get my cargo off the port? Okay, in some of our ports, it's 7 days to get your cargo out. In Nigeria, unfortunately, up to now, we are doing 20, 21 days, 18 days. What is the cost of bringing out my cargo or exporting my cargo? What documents will I sign? What is it laborious? Is this tedious for me to do that? So these are economic decisions. And that's what we are trying to do, Nigeria Shippers Council, to ensure that our ports become the preferred destination, of exporters and importers, not only in Nigeria, but within the Central and West African sub-region. Therefore, we must have our ports being efficient, technology-driven. There must be automation of procedures and processes and efficiency so that we'll attract more cargo. So it's not really actually true to say many people preferred the neighboring ports. We have been gaining a lot of cargo from the neighboring ports. Nigerian ports are efficient. Nigerian ports have put the terminals, since our concessioning, have made tremendous investments. However, the issue of infrastructure is what is defeating that. And now we must turn to the government and say, government, you have to do your role. Repair the roads, make or enable us to have multimodal approach to cargo delivery or evacuation, have access to the port, and make sure that there's competition between the terminals so that they don't fix prices, so that the shipper will have choice and option. So we are gaining that. Most of Nigerian ports are now automated. Some terminals are 90%. You won't know the difference between Europe and what's happening in Nigeria because they are quite efficient. Some terminals are mid. They were 40, 50. But Nigerian Shippers Council has gored them. It has sparked them, encouraged them, and now we are reaching a stage where most of the ports are technologically driven, which means there will not be any physical presence in the port before one transacts business. Our ports are going to be contactless. Very, very important for efficiency and for transparency. There are, of course, issues with corruption, most under the hand dealings. And this Nigerian Shippers Council is also looking at minimizing it. How do we do that? Federal government, about 3 months back, have appointed Nigerian Shippers Council as the lead agency in the operation of port manual processes. And this we are doing very well. We are trying to see that there is a competition. We must sanitize the ports, we must make them efficient, and we must make them the preferred port for exporters and importers.
Building on a functional and modern port can yield balance, flexibility, and constant focus on logistics, collaboration with varied stakeholders and investors to achieve optimum results.
The President has approved the operation of International Cargo Tracking Node. This is real-time information that we'll get about any cargo coming to Nigeria online, even before the ship sails from the loading port. So that will enable all the agencies to have access to information, and they will carry out their investigations, they will carry out their functions at the port without necessarily being at the port. This now will eliminate a lot of bureaucracy, it will minimize corruption, and it will minimize loss of government revenue. We need to own the means of carrying our cargo. We don't have Nigerians owning or operating ships. Despite the huge cargo we generate, we are losing about $75 billion in 3 years payment of freight. To who? To foreigners. And we could do that. We have ability, because we have done so before, ability to operate ships. If all the freight earned is earned by Nigerians, it will be reflected in our economy. We carry our even crude oil on FOB basis, free on board, which means those who buy the crude oil will nominate the ships, and they will certainly nominate their own ships. But we seem to be the only country doing that. Why can't we carry our crude? If a government wants to do that, it can put the policy. And I'm happy. For the first time, NNPC, are looking at that, and they have opened a window for Nigerians to carry their crude. I must, commend NNPC. Is tirelessly also working to see that the oil we'll export is meaningful to what is happening in Nigeria. So these are all things that will have to come. We have to set up the national fleet. We have to earn our, freight so that we could reflect, involve our banks, involve our insurance companies. All now is banks overseas, insurance companies overseas. We've never really indigenized or, domesticate the oil industry in Nigeria. I hope this is also a very important thing. We need to build up the infrastructure to support ownership and operation of ships, ship repair yard, ship building yard. This could be done in Nigeria. The more you do that, the more you expand the economy. Employment, infrastructure, contribution to federal government's revenue. And these are, things that, could be addressed. And if we did that, then we will not be talking about oil again. After all, are we not talking about the diversification of the source of revenue of Nigeria? This is one area too. The major challenges of Nigerian Shippers Council is regulatory resistance. We are innovative as an agency. We want to change things. And trying to bring change was an agent of change is a challenge itself. Perception of people doing things for a very long time the same way is always difficult to change. Secondly is acceptance, by certain government agencies and indeed some of the stakeholders. However, we are, it's not insurmountable. We have had generally accepted to be the policeman, if you like, of the maritime industry. We have had collaboration, we have stakeholders engagement, that's our strength. Whenever we have a decision or a policy to implement, we have to have the backing of the stakeholders. So there are challenges in the sense that the maritime industry, is plagued with a lot of irregularities. The failure of infrastructure, like the Apapa port, is worrisome. And we always call on the government because that is our duty. We don't spare the government. We also talk to the government to do the needful, as they say in this country. So we are facing that, challenge of regulatory resistance, sometimes acceptance. But we are keenly aware of that, and we are making a lot of efforts to overcome those challenges. Again, is the usual drone of finance, a lot of things to do, no money to execute. And we need the government to pay attention to the maritime industry, special attention. I don't need to say declare an emergency or anything, but the maritime industry, if well situated, if well placed, will be an alternative to unreliable oil industry. We tell the government, look at the maritime industry. Look at what are the problems of processes. Okay, we look at Nigerian custom services. What reforms do they need? They are craving for reform. Nigerian Ports Authority, they are doing so much but craving for reforms. National Inland Waterways Authority, together if there is understanding, synergy between these organizations, Nigerian Railway Corporation, then you will see that it will be a kind of reawakening. The maritime industry can finance the budget of Nigeria twice over. It can create employment. It can bring a cluster of industries. It could be the harbinger of the great leap forward as far as the economy of this country is concerned.
The federal government of Nigeria continuously aims at promoting efficiency of ports and dry ports establishment at various geopolitical locations as to promote export and import of goods in the country.
The definition of a port in the world now is where goods are loaded or discharged. You know, so you have ports of destination and ports of origin. It could be a river port. After all, it could be an airport. Okay? And so we have the dry port, and then we have the seaport. So Nigeria, so blessed, you know, with all these things, to have a combination of ports for different use. So it's connectivity. That is the problem with Barrow. Once the road is done, there could be rail connection. And Barrow is on. The same thing with Onitsha. I've seen newer now transporting things from Lagos to Onitsha River Port. I think it's going to be concession very soon, because the private sector, a responsible private sector that is, should be the one to drive such ventures. So we are all on it. Look at the industry globally, look at it critically, and try to find, you know, solutions to that. Nigerian Ports Authority again has performed the miracle of patronizing the eastern ports. You have, you know, more cargo coming to the eastern ports. Why? Because they lowered the tariff to incentivize, you know, shippers. That is very important. What the government needs to do is also to provide the linkage, interconnectivity. Mostly you like your cargo to go to Port Harcourt or Calabar, you know, but what is the rail, what is the infrastructure there if you want to transport cargo from, say, Calabar to Maiduguri? This has to be enhanced. There must be a link, a connection, you know, between the port and where the goods will eventually, you know, end. So that's why I said a holistic approach must be seen, must be taken to see that this is done. As to the dry ports, very, very important innovation by Nigerian Shippers Council, bringing shipping to the doorsteps of the shipper. In Kaduna, for example, we have an operational dry port, and you could see the enthusiasm of shippers. They are now bringing their goods to Kaduna without coming to Lagos to clear. Okay, there are, of course, the rail capacity, which has been talked about. There is the transport documents, which are not perfect, but it is a beginning. And even more importantly is the export. People are exporting cargo from the Kaduna dry port. Now, this has spurred other dry ports in Kano, for example. We were there last week with the Minister of Transportation, and we saw the efforts that the Dala Inland Dry Port is doing, the support of the Kano State government, and it pleases our heart. Very soon we'll have a dry port in Kano. Now, the significance of Kano is that it links the rail to Maradi in Niger. So you see, there should be, you know, more activities. Trading between African countries is abysmal. We need to do that. Now, if we did that, that means the factories in Kano will come to life. There will be employment, the grain markets, and every other industrial base will spring to life, because you could now export, you could import. The same thing is Funtua. Funtua is agricultural belt. It has been there for long, textile, cotton, and many other serious crops that we could export. And Katsina, Funtua dry port in Katsina is about 65% now. So it's coming to life this year. Then Ibadan, the concession has been won by a Chinese company, $100 million project, which will start soon. We're just finishing touches to the concession agreement. Then Isialanga in Abia State, very important. Could be the hub for the eastern Nigeria, for people to go and get their cargo there. No need to come to Lagos. So you will decongest the seaport. You will bring shipping to the footsteps of the doorsteps of the shippers, wherever they are. More involvement. So we diversify the economy, inclusiveness of the people, export. That will spur economic growth in Nigeria. We have done well. We are brokering the carriage of goods by rail, because it was a mistake of policy to depend entirely on one mode of transportation to our ports. That is the road, which means we put all our eggs in one basket. And once the basket, falls down, the eggs will be no more. So it is important we have multimodal approach, access to the ports. What pains us is export cargo, no access to the port. It lingers a long time, and which means contract is breached, which means degradation, of the export. But we are working with the terminals, and Nigerian Ports Authority has also said priority should be given to export. So if we had multimodal approach, we wouldn't be having this embarrassment that we have. We have the rail, which carries more cargo than the trucks. We have the barges, which is also encouraged by Nigerian Shippers Council. So for now, we are clear on that. All federal government has backed us, and it has linked or is going to link all the ports with rail, including the dry ports, so that we don't have to, rely on one mode. So we are doing that. We have done the standard operating procedure for rail evacuation of cargo with Nigerian Railway Corporation and some terminals. And even last week also there was a meeting to make sure that this is perfect. So rail is becoming increasingly important because more volume, more frequency, safety of cargo, and lower cost. That is very important. And Nigerian Shippers Council is working with Central Bank of Nigeria to ensure that we look at exports. Now, the problem with exports are the logistics. Okay, we have to make them provide the logistic chain and make it more efficient so that we are in competition, as I said. Nigeria is not in isolation. If we have the best ginger in the world in Kaduna, but there is ginger in Mexico, how much does it, 1 ton of ginger to export in Mexico, say is $10. In Nigeria, it could cost up to $25. So our competitive advantage has already been killed, by what? By cost. Secondly, access to the market. When you drag for 4 months sometimes, you won't have access because of the bad road, because the terminals are full. Then the guy in Mexico has more competitive edge than you. Then because you breach contract, and those who need the ginger must have, consistency. You have to be reliable. They will turn to the guy in Mexico. So that's what we are saying. Look at the whole chain. Access to market, that is very important. Access to the port, access to finance, and the logistical chain itself must be perfect. So it needs elaborate look by the government. The government must be, elaborate. It must be look at those aspects and see how we can. Not that it has not been done, but now we have no choice. We have been taught a lesson, by the COVID experiences, and that's why we are all bringing out these issues. We can export. Nigeria can export, and it is export, export, export from now on. Looking at agriculture, looking at the mineral, resources, looking at so many aspects, so to spur the Nigerian economy. One thing I will have to tap the governor of Central Bank and said, look at the maritime industry, especially export.
Exciting discourse there with the Executive Secretary, Chief Executive Officer of the Nigerian Shippers Council, Hassan Bello. We really must work together, and we ought to work assiduously, knowing that we have the best interest of Nigeria at heart and at hand. It takes a tag team, everybody, collective responsibility, and the work must progressively continue at this point. You're watching Weekend Deal. We reach you on the Nigerian Television Authority. We'll take a break now. When we come back, more with our conversation. Please send in your messages. We'd love to hear from you.